Welcome to our program, everybody. This is English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Last time we talked about the water cycle, which includes clouds. But today we're going to be talking about the funnest part of the water cycle, or the most fun part of the water cycle, and that is clouds.
Yeah, so we learned how the water cycle works in day one. That we have three different processes that we go through here. Evaporation, meaning the liquid turns into a gas, and then condensation, where the air becomes really soaked or saturated, and it then will cling, the water ice will cling to particles in the air, and that's when it forms into clouds. And then once that cloud gets really heavy, that's when the precipitation happens. And if you live in a place like Taiwan where it's usually too warm to snow, our precipitation usually is rain. I have seen some hail here, but it's rare, and snow is even more rare, but it happens too.
Yeah, maybe about 3 years ago, it actually snowed in northern Taiwan here.
It was exciting.
I took my daughter up to Maokong, of all places,
cool.
to see snow there. It was very rare. Maybe there's been some snow this year. I don't know, but oftentimes there is snow in the central mountain range here. But again, snow, sleet, hail, rain, those are all different kinds of precipitation. But remember, when the water is in the air and all those little water droplets gather together into one form, we've got clouds. But as you know, there are many different kinds of clouds, which we're going to talk about today. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's look up to learn about cloud types. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now. There are often clouds floating by when we look up, but their appearance might change from minute to minute. Read on to learn about the different kinds of clouds. Cirrus. On days when good weather is expected, you can see delicate clouds blown into thin strokes by strong winds high in the atmosphere. The shapes they make are said to resemble horses' tails. Alto cumulus. These high, puffy clouds come in small patches or long rows, and seeing them early in the morning can mean thunderstorms later in the day. Stratus. When you notice the entire sky is a dull white-gray color, you're seeing stratus clouds. People commonly say the sky is overcast when these sheets of low-hanging clouds cover any trace of blue sky. Cirrocumulus. These high-altitude clouds cover the sky in beautiful patterns, forming what look like rows of fish scales. Hence, a sky with these clouds is called a mackerel sky and is common on sunny but cold days in winter. Cumulus. Most people find cumulus clouds cheerful as they resemble the fluffy white clouds of children's drawings. These soft, puffy clouds form shapes as they drift by on sunny days. Cumulonimbus. When cumulus clouds turn to the dark side, they become gloomy, gigantic thunderclouds. Tall, dark gray cumulonimbus clouds can generate all sorts of foul weather like lightning storms, hail, or even tornadoes.
So let's talk about these different cloud types, guys. So here it says to look up to learn about cloud types. There are often clouds floating by when we look up. If you're floating, you're just kind of still in the air. Things that float would be things like balloons that you let go of, and they just kind of are suspended in the air, floating by. Feathers, I've seen feathers float by, from birds that they lose. They'll just float by on this little wisp of air. So these clouds are often floating by when we look up. They're not moving very quickly. Although when a storm is rolling in, we'll often say the storm is rolling in. You can see those clouds move quite quickly, and it's a very fast process if a storm is coming, because those clouds will turn from these white clouds into those dark, angry-looking clouds, and you'd better get out your umbrella or get into some shelter, or you're going to get soaked with rain.
It could happen indeed. And I did want to get back to this word float here because we're using this to talk about clouds floating in the sky. We can also talk about like a piece of wood floating in the ocean there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we use the word float to talk about things on top of water and up in the sky, whereas I think in Chinese you have different words for both of those situations, 飘 and 浮, if I'm not mistaken. But here we're talking about clouds floating in the sky. But yeah, these clouds change appearance from minute to minute. Of course, they keep moving and they keep changing shape. And let's now talk about the different kinds of clouds here. We've got cirrus clouds. And to me, those are the ones that are really, really high up in the sky. And on days when good weather is expected, you can see delicate clouds blown into thin strokes by strong winds high in the atmosphere. So these clouds are very delicate in appearance, okay? Delicate here just means they are finely detailed. They're quite high, but you can see little tiny details there, so they're delicate. Oftentimes, delicate means it's something that's so exquisite that it could be easily broken, so be careful there. And yes, indeed, they're blown into these thin strokes, like these little wisps of clouds up there that are really, really high, and they form that way because of those strong winds that are high in the atmosphere.
Yeah, Tom mentioned this. He said something that is delicate can be fragile or easily broken. You can describe somebody who has bad health as having a delicate health condition, or he has a very delicate health. He's easily damaged. He usually gets sick. Food can have a very subtle flavor. It's not spicy or too salty or sweet. It's very delicate. Not bland, which means boring, but just kind of delicate. Maybe a cream sauce that you put on a pasta can have a delicate sauce. So we use delicate in a lot of different ways, which you should probably get to know and get comfortable with. We use it also to talk about when we need to handle business dealings in a very careful way. Maybe you have some delicate negotiations going on where you have to be very careful what you say to the other company that you're negotiating with. You have to be very delicate in the words you choose, very sensitive.
I did want to mention that sometimes people use the word delicate to describe food, like if it's very 细 or 细致, as you say in Chinese. But to me, that just sounds kind of weird to call food delicate. I would call it exquisite myself. I don't know if you would use the word delicate
just
yourself.
means no. Delicate just means it's not very strongly flavored.
Right, so to me that doesn't sound like the correct word when you're describing exquisite food, but in any case, we are talking about clouds here that are very detailed. Maybe they look like crystal or something like that, and they're very high in the atmosphere. And the shapes they make are said to resemble horses' tails. I did not grow up on a farm, so I can't really relate to that description, but I have seen horses' tails before, and yes, perhaps that is an adequate description. Now, let's talk about another type of cloud here. Alto cumulus. Okay, alto means high, and cumulus is another kind of cloud we're going to get to in just a second here. But these are high, puffy clouds, and they come in small patches or long rows. And seeing them early in the morning can mean thunderstorms later in the day. So these clouds are pretty high, but they're puffy. They're not like horses' tails high up in the atmosphere like cirrus clouds. These are a little more puffy, even though they're very high, and oftentimes, of course, they are in long rows. So they look like they're evenly spaced apart from each other, like cookies on a cookie sheet or something like that.
It's interesting. You said alto means high. It actually means low if you're talking about music. So the lowest female voice is an alto. But if you're talking about a guy who's an alto, he has a very high voice. So I guess it can mean both in music. But typically, if you see alto folks out there who sing, it means you have the low voice, the low part. So they're high, puffy clouds. And they seem to mean that a thunderstorm is going to be coming later in the day. So you want to watch out for those. Now, the stratus cloud, when you notice the entire sky is a dull white-gray color, You know what we're talking about. We get these a lot in Taiwan. You're seeing stratus clouds. People commonly say the sky is overcast when these sheets or layers or thin layers of something, that's why we're using that word sheets. Sheets of low-hanging clouds cover any trace of blue sky. You can't see any blue. All you can see is that dull white-gray color. Now, overcast, I think some people think if the sky is overcast and they go to the beach, they won't get a sunburn, so they don't put on sunscreen. That is not true. When it's overcast, those UV rays can still get through and burn your skin or give you a tan. So ladies out there who don't want to be tan, when you see this kind of overcast sky, you still need to wear sunscreen or take out that cute umbrella to keep your skin as white or as pale as possible. I know you guys like that here.
Indeed. And of course, it's common here in Taipei to see overcast skies.
True.
Especially during the winter. And that's because these clouds are low-hanging clouds. They're very close to the ground. And yes, you can't really see any blue sky. Not even a little bit, not even a trace. A trace here just means a small amount of something. And oftentimes you hear that in weather reports. Well, there was just a trace of precipitation today. In other words, it rained just a little bit. There was just a trace of rain. Okay, that brings us to the halfway point in today's lesson. What do you say we take a break now and come back in a few minutes after we hear from our Chinese teacher?
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。昨天我们带大家谈谈云跟水循环之间紧密的关系，那么今天就要带大家看看各种不同种类的云哦。如果你很喜欢云的话，你今天一定超兴奋的，因为我们会介绍很多种不同的云。那么如果你把这个英文学起来啊，之后说出来真的是感觉很专业哦。我们来看一下今天的文章，在第一段当中的第一句其实就有一个很重要的句型。如果我们要说有什么如何如何，在英文会用 there 加 be 动词。注意哦，后面的人事物如何如何的那个如何动作啊，只能够用动词 ing 或者是 pp。我们来看一下这个句子好了。常常都会有云飘过，当我们抬头的时候。There are often clouds， 云复数，所以我们用 there are。云飘不是被飘，所以我们用主动的 ing floating by。好，句子到这边其实就可以算是结束了，只是后面有多了一个时间 when we look up。那你说为什么后面只能用动词 ing 或 pp 呢？因为一个句子就是一个动词，所以当我们说有 there 加 be 动词的时候，这个 be 动词已经占了动词的缺，后面的飘当然只能用动词 ing 或者是 pp 哦，所以这边要特别的小心。好，但是云飘过，云的外观常常会变来变去的，而且是快速的，几乎每分钟都在改变呢。句尾的 from minute to minute 可以把它画起来，字面上就是从1分钟到另外1分钟，言下之意就是每分钟都改变，快速的改变。好，我们来看第一种云，第一种云叫做卷云，英文叫做 cirrus。卷云什么时候会看到呢？如果天气可能还不错的时候，通常就会看到很精致的云被那种大气高层的强风吹成一缕一缕细丝样子的，那个就叫做 cirrus 卷云。不过我们在卷云这句话当中，第一句我们先看一下 on days， 特定日子，特定的哪一天，甚至特定的某日子的早上、下午、晚上都会用 on这个介系词哦。 On days when 到逗点前面这边 when 到逗点前面这边可以左右括号，它是关系子句，修饰 days。 在什么样的日子当中呢？如果是好天气被预期的那些日子当中，你就可以看到卷云。在逗点之后有一个感官动词 see someone doing something，See something done， 感官动词后面先加一个受词，在这里是 delicate clouds。 那么这些云是被吹成细丝状，被吹 pp blown into blown， 所以这里的感官动词要注意一下。不过这一段的第二句 the shapes they make， 这个地方也是关系子句的简化， that 省略掉， 那么 that 因为在关系词 they make 当中当受词，所以直接省略。那么第二种呢，就是高积云。高积云这字有点长哦，叫做 autocumulus。autocumulus 高积云，高积云是高而且蓬松的云，基本上它呈现的是一种小块长列的样子。在这句话当中，我们把动词的 come in 特别画起来。come in 是以什么什么形式出现，以什么什么形式出现，不是字面上的进来哦，而另外有一个意思就是以什么什么形式出现。所以如果在清晨看到它的话，就意味着当天晚上晚一点或下午的时候可能会有 thunderstorm， 会有暴雷雨哦。第三种是层云 stratus。什么时候出现层云呢？也就是当你注意到整个天空都是那种很阴暗的 dull 灰白色 white gray color， 那么其实你就会看到层云。因为这些低低的云，我们看第二句话当中有一个复合形容词 low hanging， 字面上是挂着很低的 low hanging。这些云层 sheets 覆盖蓝天的时候，我们大概就会说，好像天空满布乌云 overcast。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, so let's sum up so far here. We're talking about cloud types. We've got cirrus clouds, which are really, really high, and they look like horses' tails. Then we've got alto cumulus, which are kind of puffy clouds that are high in the sky, and they form long rows. And if you see them early in the morning, hey, you might have thunderstorms later in the day. Then we've got stratus clouds, which are really close to the ground, and they pretty much cover the entire sky. And so oftentimes when we have stratus clouds, we describe the sky as being overcast, and you can't even see a trace of blue sky.
Right. We use a pretty famous phrase in English, especially if you're, watching a crime show or a Law and Order type of show. If someone disappears without a trace, it means they're gone and there's no sign of them. There are no clues left behind for the detectives to follow up on. That person just disappeared without a trace. There was a TV show for a while in America. It was a crime show. It was called Without a Trace. And I thought that was kind of a cute title, yeah. And they were, of course, trying to find people who are missing. So, yeah, darn it, when we get those overcast skies, it gets a little depressing, I think, for us. If you can't see the sun or the blue sky for a while. I remember one winter just a couple of years ago, I counted 12 days in a row with no sun, no blue sky, and I was getting a little depressed. I was.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, of course, if you live up here in good old Taipei.
Right.
And a lot of times we keep saying, well, I think I'll just take a trip down to Taichung just so I can see some blue sky for a change.
True.
But I've heard from people in Taichung that the weather isn't so great there sometimes either, but at least it's better than Taipei usually.
Then you should go to Kaohsiung.
Yeah, go down to Kaohsiung, and if that doesn't work, gee, where are you going to go then? But in any case, again, we've got these different kinds of clouds here. Cirrus, alto cumulus, stratus, and now we're going to talk about cirrocumulus. Okay, so these are high-altitude clouds, and they cover the sky in beautiful patterns, forming what look like rows of fish scales. Interesting. So these are similar to alto cumulus clouds. Again, they're high-altitude clouds. They're still pretty high in the sky, but I guess they have more patterns this way.
Yeah.
They form these rows of clouds, one after another, and people describe them as looking like rows of fish scales. Now, a scale is not something you weigh a fish on. In this particular case, it's those things on the body of the fish. They look like little C's, the letter C, crescents there. Those are fish scales.
Oh, I never thought of them as C's. That's interesting. So it says here, hence, a sky with these clouds is called a mackerel sky. This is a new phrase for me. I've never heard this before. But I have to say, these particular type of clouds, these cirrocumulus, are really beautiful. We didn't have many of these in Arizona, if ever. I don't remember ever seeing them. And I've often looked up at the sky and seen this pattern of scales, fish scales. And I've taken lots of pictures to send home because the clouds are so unique to me, at least. We didn't get these in New York City either. These are really beautiful. So mackerel sky, a mackerel is an oily fish. It's got a lot of omega-3, which is very healthy for you. Mackerels are good to eat. They're a predatory fish, meaning they feed on other smaller fish. But yeah, a lot of mackerel is commercially fished and sold to consumers.
Yeah, mackerel, I think, is Thai in Chinese or Qingyu in Chinese. So I can imagine a mackerel as having really big scales on the side of its body there. So, yeah, if you see a mackerel, you might think, hey, that looks like the sky sometimes when we have cirrocumulus clouds. Now, let's talk about cumulus here. We have seen the word cumulus a couple of times already. Alto cumulus and cirrocumulus. But now we've got just regular cumulus clouds, and most people find cumulus clouds cheerful as they resemble the fluffy white clouds of children's drawings. Yeah, I think people love cumulus clouds the most.
They're my fave.
Because, of course, you can look at those clouds and you can see images in those clouds. Oh, that looks like a dog. Oh, that looks like a cat. Or maybe you'll see different scenes from the Bible or from Buddhism or whatever in those clouds. Yeah, you can just let your imagination run wild and see what you can think of when you look at those cumulus clouds.
I love these. Maybe it's because they are so cheerful. But we get a lot of cumulus here in Taiwan. I especially love cumulus when the sun is shining through one of those puffy clouds. Oh, it just looks so beautiful. So they're soft, puffy clouds, and as Tom says, they're some of the favorites for kids. I guess I'm a kid because they're my fave in the whole world. I love these. So what's the last one? Cumulonimbus. Cumulonimbus, which is a fun word to say. So these are cumulus clouds that turn to the dark side. I love how our author here, Catherine Cat, she puts this, they turn to the dark side. Now, if you're a big Star Wars fan, this phrase is familiar to you because sometimes people, they start out being good. They're part of the good side, the good guys, and then they turn to the dark side. And this is like the Star Wars. You all know that Darth Vader, he started out okay, but then he turned to the dark side. So these are clouds that start out really pretty, but then they become very gloomy, gigantic thunder clouds. And we get a lot of these here in Taiwan.
Right, so of course these are cumulus clouds that have become dark. And if you look at them, you might think, hey, it's going to rain, or there might be a thunderstorm. And, of course, one word we use to describe these clouds is gloomy. Okay, if something's gloomy, it means kind of sad that something bad is going to happen. Oh, this is really gloomy weather. I really wish the sun would come out. And if something is gigantic, that just means it's really, really huge, really, really big. We're using the word thundercloud here, which is a cloud that may produce lightning and thunder. Sometimes these clouds can stretch all the way from near ground level all the way up to really high in the atmosphere. Those will be called thunderheads, and those, of course, oftentimes produce pretty severe weather, maybe thunderstorms, or like as we describe here later in the paragraph, maybe some hail and even tornadoes. So again, these are thunderclouds. And yeah, we're also describing them as being tall, dark gray, cumulonimbus clouds. Yeah, that's a word we don't really use that often in English, so don't worry if you can't say that word clearly. But if you're a meteorologist or somebody who specializes in the weather, then you probably are expected to say this word correctly every time you say it.
I don't hear the weather forecasters use this very much either, so you're okay. I wanted to mention gloomy can also be a word you use to describe the atmosphere of a place. Maybe a place that you're standing in is very dark or there's not enough light. And it gives you kind of a frightening feeling or depressing feeling. That's a gloomy house or a gloomy corridor, a gloomy castle. Castles can be gloomy. So yeah, they can make you kind of depressed and pessimistic if you don't like rain. But let me tell you, from someone who grew up in a desert, when it rained in Arizona, my mom would take a chair and put it outside just so she could watch the rain. So not everyone feels like rain's a bad thing. Some places don't get very much rain, so we love it.
Yeah, I think most people hate the rain here in Taipei because it's so inconvenient when you have to go out and ride your scooter to school or work or whatever.
You get soaked.
Nobody wants to put on those raincoats and take them on and off and stuff like that. But yeah, if you're from Arizona or Iowa, where I'm from, sometimes when it rains and you get a summer thunderstorm, it can be quite exciting. Indeed, where I'm from, of course, you could see into the distance the Great Waves, and you could see those storms approaching from the Dakotas. They're coming in, getting closer. You can see lightning and you can hear the thunder, and you can count and figure out how far away it is until it gets closer. And your mother tells you to get back inside the house. So yeah, a thunderstorm or tornadoes or hailstorms are foul weather. Foul just means really bad. And again, these are some examples here. Lightning storms, they're also called thunderstorms. And of course, hail is the little white balls that fall from the sky. And tornadoes, 龙卷风, which are very scary.
For those of you out there who are sports fans, you see this word foul and you think, wait, isn't that what they use in basketball and baseball and football? Yeah, it is. So if there's a foul in a sports game, it just means something's been unfair or somebody is doing something that's not allowed. Of course, a foul in baseball is you hit the ball, but it goes back or it's caught and you can't get on base with that. But here, it really does mean just kind of nasty, kind of bad. So foul weather is just bad weather, unpleasant. And somebody can also have foul language, which just means someone's swearing or using dirty words to describe something. Or someone has foul breath, which means they have really bad breath. So we use it in different ways. It's a great word to learn and to focus on a little bit.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation. Let's hear now from our Chinese teacher.
接下来的第4种云是卷积云 cirrocumulus。这个卷积云啊，其实是高海拔的云朵。我们来看一下高海拔这个字在第一句当中 high altitude。我们注意一下 altitude 这个字哦，它指的是高度。第一句话当中有一个分词构句，因为第一个动词是 cover， 那么逗点之后，另外第二个动词是形成 form 这个动词，本来有一个连接词 and form， 但是连接词 and 省略掉了，所以另外一个动词就直接变成动词 ing。所以高海拔的这些云朵，所谓的卷积云，形成一排一排，看起来好像是鱼鳞的样子。所以这些云朵的天空啊，就变成鱼鳞天，我们通常会这么说。那么在冬天很寒冷的时候，还蛮 common， 很常见的。接下来第5种就是积云 cumulus。在积云这个地方啊，其实我们都会觉得积云看起来很开心耶 cheerful。为什么会很开心呢？根据上下文来推断，我们积云的第一句话当中又有一个连接词的 as， 因为后面的 They resemble the fluffy white clouds of children's drawings 代表的是为什么我们觉得积云看起来令人赏心悦目的原因，所以在这里的 as 应该是 because 的意思，当然它也是个连接词啦。可是第二句话当中又出现了一个 as 哦，所以我们可以判断一下是 because when 还是如同好像的意思呢？猜猜看。对，后面因为表示的是时间，在什么时候会如何如何，所以第二句话当中的 as 是 when 的意思。好，最后一种呢，就是积雨云 cumulonimbus。 cumulonimbus 这个字超难念的。好，当然就是积云变成乌云的时候啊，其实就会变成积雨云。那看起来就是非常的 gloomy， 很幽暗，但是又很大 gigantic， 看起来好像就要下雨的意思。言下之意就是，当你看到积雨云的时候，其实很有可能就会产生暴雷雨 lightning storms， 甚至冰雹 hail， 或者是龙卷风哦 tornadoes。今天学了很多云，大家记得怎么念哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today. And yeah, I learned a lot today about
Me too.
different kinds of clouds. And I'm really looking forward to going outside and seeing what kind of clouds are floating up there today. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.